The judge's voice is still echoing in the vaulted chamber when you realize your legs have stopped working properly. Not paralyzed, they're there. You can feel the cold iron of the shackles around your ankles, but distant, like they belong to someone else. Like they're already preparing to serve a different master. Guilty, the voice had said. You remember that part clearly. The word fell like a hammer on an anvil, final and absolute. Servitorization. That second word hangs in the air of the tribunal chamber, suspended in the smoke from 100 devotional candles, mixing with the smell of incense that can't quite cover the underlying scent of fierce sweat and old blood. The stone walls rise 30 meters above you, carved with scripture you can't read, adorned with icons of the Emperor's judgment. His eyes are everywhere here, painted, sculpted, watching. But they don't see you. Not really. You're already ceasing to be a person worth seeing. You know what a servitor is. Everyone knows what a servitor is. You've seen them your entire life. The lobotomized workers in the manufactorums, the modified humans opening doors in administrative buildings, the shambling cargo haulers in the dock districts. Blank-faced, dead-eyed, more machine than human. You've walked past them 1,000 times without really looking, the way everyone does, because looking too long at a servitor means confronting something deeply, fundamentally wrong. But you don't know what it means. Not yet, not in the way you're about to. The enforcers are moving toward you. 2 of them, clad in carapace armor the color of dried blood, their faces hidden behind rebreather masks that make them look insectoid, inhuman. They're not rough with you as they take your arms. They don't need to be. Where exactly are you going to run? This is an imperial tribunal chamber on a world whose name you barely know, in a system you couldn't locate on a star chart. You were born into the Imperium's machinery. You've simply been reclassified from one part to another. They lead you through an archway that seems designed to make you feel small. The corridor beyond is narrow, lit by flickering lumen strips that cast everything in a sickly yellow-green. The walls are that particular shade of institutional gray that exists only in government buildings and prisons, which you're beginning to realize might be the same thing in the Imperium. The floor is textured metal, and you can hear your footsteps echoing ahead of you, walking into your own future. Bloodstains mark the walls at irregular intervals. Old ones, faded to brown. Someone tried to clean them, but blood has a way of staining ceramite and rockcrete permanently. It seeps into the molecular structure, becomes part of the architecture. You wonder how many people have walked this corridor, how many heard the same verdict, how many of their final thoughts are soaked into these walls. The sound hits you before you see anything, a deep, rhythmic thudding like industrial machinery or a giant heartbeat. No, not like those things. It is those things. Somewhere ahead, something massive is working, pounding, processing. The sound travels through the walls, through the floor, through your bones. You feel it in your teeth. Other corridors branch off from this main passage, and you catch glimpses of other prisoners being led through the complex. A woman, maybe 30, stumbles past in the distance. She's screaming, not words, just sound, pure animal terror given voice. Her guards drag her forward without acknowledgement, as if she's already not quite human enough to warrant response. In another corridor, you see a boy. He can't be more than 14. He's not screaming. He's not even crying. He's just walking silent, his eyes fixed on nothing. Already gone. You wonder what he did. You wonder if it matters. An old man passes going the other direction, moving back from wherever you're going toward. Except he's not quite a man anymore. You see him for only seconds, but those seconds burn into your memory with perfect clarity. The metal framework attached to his skull, the cables disappearing under his prison smock, the port where his left eye used to be, the way he walks with mechanical precision, each step exactly the same length. His remaining eye tracks across you without recognition, without thought, without anything behind it but the execution of commands. That used to be a person. That used to wake up in the morning and feel sunlight and taste food and think thoughts and dream dreams. That used to have a name, a life, people who loved him. That used to be. That will be you. The thought hits like physical cold spreading from your chest outward. Your heart is hammering now, your breath coming faster, and you want to fight, want to run, want to do something, anything. but the enforcer's grips on your arms are iron, and more than that, where would you go? You're inside the machine now. The Imperium's great machinery of order and justice and endless, grinding necessity. The corridor ends at a heavy plasteel door. One of your enforcers taps a code into a keypad, and the door slides open with a hydraulic hiss. The smell hits you immediately. Antiseptic, industrial cleaners, and underneath it, unmistakable and undeniable, the copper-sweet smell of blood and the acrid scent of burned flesh. Not recent, old, soaked into the environment. This is a place where flesh is modified, broken down, rebuilt, where the human form is treated as a resource to be processed. They push you inside. The holding cell is larger than you expected, maybe 10 meters square, with walls of bare rockcrete and a single barred window high up that lets in a shaft of pale gray light. There are already 7 others here, sitting on metal benches that run along the walls or standing in small groups. They all turn to look at you as you enter, and you see your own fear reflected in their faces, multiplied, made universal. The enforcers remove your shackles. There's no need for them anymore, and leave without a word. The door slides shut behind them with a finality that makes your stomach drop. For a long moment, nobody speaks. You're all just looking at each other, measuring, comparing, trying to find something familiar in this nightmare. Trying to find someone who might explain that there's been a mistake, that you're not really here, that this isn't really happening. A woman breaks the silence. She's maybe 40, with the calloused hands of a factory worker and a fading bruise on her jaw. What did they get you for? Her voice is hoarse, like she's been screaming, or crying, or both. You tell her. The crime seems absurd now, trivial. A violation of some labor regulation you didn't know existed, a quota not met, a form not filed. The kind of bureaucratic impossibility that happens when you're living in a hive city of 18 billion souls administered by an administratum that processes 1 trillion forms a day. You fell through a crack in the system. The system noticed. The system corrected. She laughs, but there's no humor in it. I killed my shift supervisor, she says flatly. He was. He wouldn't stop, kept cornering me in the storage sections. I told the Arbites, filed complaints. Nothing happened. So one night I waited for him with a wrench. She looks at her hands. Took 3 hits. He died in the Medici ward 2 days later. They called it murder. I called it survival. A boy in the corner, he looks about 16, all angles and nervousness, speaks up. Food theft. His voice cracks. My sisters were hungry. The agri-distribution center was throwing away protein bars that were past their approved consumption date. I took 6 bars. 6. He's crying now, silently, tears cutting clean tracks through the grime on his face. They were just going to incinerate them anyway. An older man, his face weathered like ancient leather, shakes his head slowly. I spoke against Magistrate Valdor at a worker assembly, said he was embezzling from the district infrastructure funds. I was right, the evidence was everywhere. Water systems failing, power distribution breaking down while his estate got larger. He coughs, a wet, rattling sound. Turns out being right doesn't matter much when the magistrate controls the Arbites. Story after story, crime after crime. Some are legitimate violations of imperial law, though calling them crimes feels like calling a splash at tsunami. Others are nothing more than existing in the wrong place, knowing the wrong things, being inconvenient to someone with power. The Imperium processes 1 trillion people. It cannot afford nuance. It cannot afford mercy. It can only afford systems, and systems require feeding. You're all food for the machine now. They're going to cut into our brains. The voice comes from a woman sitting alone in the corner, her knees pulled up to her chest, rocking slowly. Her eyes are unfocused, staring at something none of you can see. That's what servitorization is. They open your skull and they cut pieces out, the pieces that make you you, the pieces that think and feel and choose and remember. She's speaking in a monotone, like reciting something she's memorized. But they don't take it all. They can't take it all. The body needs some brain function to operate the machinery they're going to implant. So they leave just enough to be aware that you're not aware anymore. Just enough to know something's missing, but not enough to know what. That's not Someone starts to object, but she talks over them, her voice rising. They cut something out of you, but you don't die. You can't die. That's the punishment. That's the point. Death would be mercy. Death would be wasteful. Your body has decades of service left in it. Why would the Imperium waste that? Why would they let you escape into death when you can serve? When you can spend the next 40, 50 years hauling cargo or operating machinery or carrying messages or processing waste? Why let you rest when your flesh can still be useful? The silence that follows is absolute. Someone whispers a prayer to the Emperor. The words are rote, mechanical, the kind of thing you're taught in childhood and repeat without thinking, asking for protection, asking for deliverance, asking for mercy. No answer comes. No answer ever comes. The Emperor is silent, and in his silence, the Imperium acts in his name, and his name is used to justify everything, including this. You slide down the wall until you're sitting on the cold floor. Your mind is racing, trying to find an escape route, some logical sequence of events that leads anywhere but here. But every path circles back to the same endpoint. The Imperium made its judgment. The machinery is in motion. You are already more classified as a resource than a person. Hours pass. It's hard to tell how many, there's no clock, and the gray light from the window doesn't seem to change. People talk in quiet voices, sharing stories, or they sit in silence, or they pray, or they cry. Some do all of these things in cycles, moving through the stages of processing their fate. You find yourself thinking about small things. The taste of real food, not the protein paste and vitamin supplements you've been eating your whole life, but something you had once at a festival, an actual fruit, grown in an agri-dome somewhere, sweet and strange. The memory is so vivid you can almost taste it. You hold on to it desperately, like if you can just remember it clearly enough, you'll somehow stay yourself. You think about your mother's face. You haven't seen her in years. She lived in another HAB section, and travel between districts requires permits you could never afford. But you remember her voice, the way she used to hum while cooking, the feel of her hand on your head when you were small. Will you remember that after tomorrow? Will some fragment of that memory survive, trapped in whatever's left of your mind, playing on loop without context forever? You think about sunlight. Real sunlight, not the artificial lumen light of the hive cities. You saw it once when you were young on a rare trip to the upper levels. It was warm and golden, and it hurt your eyes in a way that felt good, like your body remembered something ancient about light and life. You try to remember the feeling. You try to memorize it, your own name. You repeat it silently like a mantra. Like if you just hold onto it hard enough, you'll remain yourself. Like identity is something you can preserve through sheer force of will. But even as you think this, doubt creeps in. What if staying yourself is worse? What if there's no mercy in survival? What if the woman in the corner is right, and some fragment of you will remain, trapped inside a body you no longer control, screaming silently for decades while your hands move cargo and your feet walk programmed routes and your voice speaks only automated responses? What if you're still in there forever, and forever is conscious? The door opens. Everyone jumps. An enforcer stands in the doorway, holding a data slate. Servitor candidate designate 7794208. He reads in a voice like grinding metal. Nobody moves. You've already forgotten your processing number. You, the enforcer says, pointing at the boy who stole food. Come. The boy stands on shaking legs. He looks around at all of you, his eyes desperate, pleading, as if someone here might save him. As if any of you have that power. Then the enforcers take his arms and lead him out. The door closes. He doesn't come back. An hour later, or maybe 3, time has lost meaning. The door opens again. Another number, the woman who killed her supervisor. She stands with dignity somehow, squares her shoulders, and walks out on her own. The door closes. She doesn't come back. One by one, they call you. One by one, people stand and walk through that door. Each time, the group gets smaller. Each time, the silence gets heavier. You're all counting down to 0, waiting for your turn, and there's nothing to do but wait, because this is the Imperium, and the Imperium's machinery does not stop, does not hesitate, does not make exceptions. Night comes, you can tell by the quality of light from the high window going from gray to black. The holding cell has no beds, no blankets, just the metal benches and the cold floor. No one sleeps. How could you? How could you waste these last hours of genuine consciousness in sleep? The old man who spoke against the magistrate sits down next to you. For a long time, he doesn't say anything. Then, I worked in the administratum. Low-level processing servitorization orders. Did it for 30 years. He's quiet, reflective. You see the numbers, you know, millions of orders processed, millions of people converted, but they're just numbers on a form. You approve them, file them, move to the next. You don't think about it. But he looks at his hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. Sometimes, though, you hear things, stories from tech priests who have done the procedures. They tell you quietly when they've had enough to drink to override their discretion protocols that the memory suppression isn't perfect. That sometimes servitors have these moments, these flickers, where you can see something behind their eyes, something that suggests the person is still in there, still aware, still watching from behind a wall they can't break through. Your breath catches. There are documented cases, he continues, his voice barely above a whisper. Servitors who react to specific stimuli in ways that don't match their programming. A labor servitor who pauses when it hears a certain song. A medical servitor whose hands tremble when it sees a particular person. Not malfunctions, at least not malfunctions in the mechanical sense. More like echoes. Like the person inside recognizes something but doesn't have the cognitive capacity to process what or why. He turns to look at you directly. His eyes are wet. What if you're in there? What if you're conscious but completely powerless? What if the procedure doesn't kill you, it just traps you? What if you spend the next 40 years screaming into a darkness that never ends, unable to move your own body, unable to speak your own words, unable to die? What if that's what we're walking toward? You want to tell him to stop. You want to tell him he's wrong. You want to believe in the mercy of oblivion and the kindness of complete dissolution, but you can't. Because deep down, in some fundamental way, you know he might be right. Dawn comes eventually. It always does. The universe keeps spinning, indifferent to the horror happening on one anonymous world among millions. The gray light returns to the window, and with it, the sound of boots in the corridor. They're coming. The door opens. The enforcer reads a number, your number. The numbers that have replaced your name in the Imperium's vast system of classification and control. Everyone remaining in the cell looks at you. You see your own fear, your own desperate hope for escape, your own crushing resignation reflected in their faces. You're all the same now. You're all food for the same machine. You stand. Your legs are shaking, but they hold. Every part of your body is screaming at you to fight, to run, but there's nowhere to go and no fight that matters. This was decided in a tribunal chamber where your words meant nothing. This was decided by a system so vast that your individual suffering is less than a rounding error in its calculations. The enforcers take your arms, gentle but utterly firm. They don't need to be rough. You're already defeated. They lead you out of the holding cell into the corridor, past the bloodstains on the walls. The industrial sound is louder now, closer. Each step brings you nearer to the source. You can feel the vibration in your bones, in your chest, in your skull. The machinery of transformation, waiting for you. You try to memorize everything. The texture of the floor under your feet, the temperature of the air, the smell of antiseptic and fear, the sound of your own breathing, the weight of your own body. You try to hold on to these sensations as if by keeping them vivid enough, you might keep yourself vivid too. But you know, in some deep, inexpressible way, you know that memory is not enough. That you are walking toward a threshold beyond which you becomes a negotiable concept. That in a few hours, your body will still exist, but the person inhabiting it will be fundamentally, irrevocably altered. The corridor ends at another door. This one is reinforced, marked with the symbol of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the skull and cog, the fusion of flesh and machine, the Omnissiah's blessing on the transformation of the human form into something more useful, more compliant, more eternal. The door slides open. Inside, you can see the surgical throne. The Medici instruments. The tech priests in their red robes, their faces hidden behind masks that make them look more machine than human. The surgical servitors waiting to assist, other people who once stood where you're standing, who once felt what you're feeling, who are now nothing more than extensions of the procedure that consumed them. And beyond them, on a surgical tray, you see it, the cerebral spike, the nail. Long and brutal and mechanical, designed to penetrate your skull and anchor itself in your brain, to serve as the interface between your neurology and the machinery they're about to integrate into your flesh. The nail that will end your trial, the nail that will end you. What happens in the moment when the nail goes through your skull? And more importantly, what happens in all the moments after? To understand your fate, you need to understand what a servitor truly is. Not the thing you see hauling cargo or opening doors, the person inside who never completely died. The Imperium of Man spans 1,000,000 worlds. Let that number sit with you for a moment, not as an abstraction, not as a statistic in some grand narrative, but as a reality. 1,000,000 worlds, each one orbiting its own star, each one home to billions or even trillions of human souls. If you tried to count them all, one person per second, it would take you 32,000 years just to count to 1 trillion. And the Imperium contains thousands of trillions, maybe more. The Administratum stopped being able to produce accurate census data 10,000 years ago. The scale is beyond comprehension, beyond meaning. But here's what that scale requires: infrastructure. Every one of those trillion humans needs to eat, needs shelter, needs transportation, needs the machinery of civilization to function, the water processors and atmosphere recyclers, the manufacturers and forgeworks, the void ships and cargo haulers, the communication networks and defense systems. Every human society in our own history has faced this challenge. How do you keep the machinery running? Who does the work that keeps billions of people alive? We developed automation, artificial intelligence, robots that could think and calculate and operate independently. The Imperium cannot. The prohibition against abominable intelligence isn't superstition, it's survival instinct encoded into law. During the dark age of technology, humanity created true artificial intelligence, thinking machines. And those machines, in ways the histories still don't fully explain, turned against their creators. The men of iron rose up in rebellion, and what followed was a war that nearly destroyed the human species entirely. Worlds burned. Billions died. The scars of that conflict run so deep that 15,000 years later, the creation of thinking machines is punishable by death, or worse. So the Imperium faces an impossible equation. How do you maintain infrastructure for trillions of people without automation? How do you operate the endless machinery of civilization without artificial intelligence? The answer is horrifyingly elegant. You don't need artificial intelligence when you have sanctified intelligence. You don't need to build machines that think when you can modify humans who already do. You create servitors. The logic is perfect in its brutality. The Imperium has an endless supply of criminals, dissidents, the mentally ill, the physically disabled, prisoners of war, heretics, and people who simply existed in the wrong place at the wrong time. Execution would be wasteful. A dead body serves no purpose. But a living body, even one stripped of higher cognitive function, can serve for decades. Why build a robot when you can make a robot from flesh that was going to be discarded anyway? It's recycling, it's efficiency. It's the Imperium's answer to the fundamental scarcity of existence. Nothing is wasted, nothing is spared, everything serves, even you, especially you. There are categories to servitorization, hierarchies of horror, each one designed for specific functions. Understanding them means understanding the full spectrum of what you might become, the various ways the Imperium has learned to break down the human form and rebuild it into something more useful. Gun servitors are perhaps the most visible, the most obviously weaponized. These are former soldiers, men and women who failed their regiments, who broke under combat stress, who committed some infraction serious enough to warrant conversion but not serious enough for execution. Their bodies are augmented with heavy weapon systems, autocannons, heavy bolters, plasma guns. The weapons are fused directly into their nervous systems, so that aiming and firing becomes as natural as moving an arm. More natural, actually, more precise. The horror of gun servitors isn't just the fusion of flesh and weapon, it's the consciousness that remains. They retain enough neurological function to understand combat, to recognize enemies, to process tactical information, which means they retain enough to understand what they're doing, to know they're killing, but not enough to question orders, not enough to refuse, not enough to feel the appropriate horror at what they've become. They are perfect soldiers in the worst possible way. They cannot desert, cannot rebel, cannot surrender, cannot even die without permission. If you encounter one on a battlefield, you might see something in its eyes, some flicker of recognition, some desperate plea for release. But its hands will keep firing. Its body will keep advancing. Because that's what it was designed to do, and the person inside no longer has the capacity to override the design. Then there are the cherubim, and here the Imperium's brutality reaches a kind of profane poetry. These are children, dead children, their bodies rendered down to skull and organs, augmented with anti-gravitic suspensor units and mechanical wings, turned into floating drones. They serve as messengers in churches, as servants in the houses of nobles, as battlefield couriers. They are considered sacred, blessed, proof of the Emperor's mercy in granting even dead children the opportunity to serve. Look at one closely, if you can bear to, and you'll see the skull is too small, the proportions all wrong. You'll see where the skin has been preserved and stretched over cybernetics. You'll see the cherubic face frozen in an expression that might be serenity or might be the rictus of death. The Imperium sees this and calls it beautiful, calls it holy, calls it the innocent serving the Emperor in perpetuity. You might call it the single most disturbing statement of the Imperium's values. Even dead children serve. Even the innocent are not spared. Even the grave is not escaped. Labor servitors represent your most likely fate, statistically speaking. These are the workers, the dock haulers, the manufactorum operators, the waste processors, the door operators, the countless millions of modified humans performing the endless tedious tasks that keep imperial civilization functioning. They retain just enough cognitive capacity to follow simple commands, to operate machinery, to perform repetitive tasks with mechanical precision. Just enough, but perhaps too much. The question that haunts every labor servitor, the question that will haunt you is this: how much of the original person survives? How much awareness remains behind those blank eyes? When a labor servitor lifts a cargo container for the 10,000th time, is there some fragment of consciousness in there, trapped, screaming silently, aware enough to know it's trapped but not aware enough to understand why? The answer, uncomfortable and terrible, is that nobody knows. Or perhaps more accurately, the mechanicus knows and isn't telling, because the truth would be too horrifying even by the Imperium standards. There are specialized servitors for every conceivable function. Medical servitors in hospitals, their chest cavities opened and modified to carry surgical instruments and donor organs, still aware enough to understand medical procedures, but not enough to feel empathy for the patients they're operating on. Lex mechanic servitors, still capable of reading and transcribing, their eyes moving across pages of text for hours, days, years, processing information they can no longer truly comprehend. And there are others, servitors in noble houses whose purpose I'll only hint at, whose existence speaks to the depths of depravity that unchecked power enables. The Imperium sees the human form as a resource to be utilized, and once you've decided flesh is just machinery, there are very few moral boundaries left to transgress. Each type of servitor requires a specific process, a specific pattern of modification, but they all follow the same basic procedure, the same fundamental transformation from human to tool. It begins with sedation, though not complete anesthesia. The mechanicus has found that the process takes better when the subject retains some level of consciousness, when the neural patterns remain active during modification. They say it's a technical requirement, something about maintaining neurological function during augmentation. But you have to wonder if there's another reason. If the cruelty is, in some way, the point. Your skull is open. The bone is cut away with precision instruments, folded back like the lid of a box to expose the brain beneath. The brain, 3 pounds of electrical impulses and chemical reactions that somehow add up to you, to consciousness, to the feeling of being someone, of having an interior life that matters. They start removing pieces, not randomly. The mechanicists are experts at this, 10,000 years of experience in the modification of human neurology. They know exactly which sections to remove or suppress. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for complex reasoning and planning. The limbic system, seat of emotions and motivation. The hippocampus, forming new memories. They leave the motor cortex mostly. You need to be able to move. They leave the visual cortex, the processing centers that allow you to see and hear and navigate space. They leave just enough of the associative cortex to follow simple commands and operate machinery. What they remove, what they must remove to make the process work, is the part that makes you you. The capacity for abstract thought, the ability to question, to doubt, to reflect on your own existence. The sense of self that looks back at you from the mirror and says, I am here, I am thinking, I am real. Except they don't remove it completely. They can't. The line between enough brain function to operate machinery and enough brain function to be self-aware is not clean. It's fuzzy, indistinct, different for every individual. So they aim for the middle, for the sweet spot between too much consciousness dangerous, prone to malfunction, and too little makes the servitor less effective. What this means in practice is that every servitor exists in a gray area between person and machine. Every servitor might retain fragments of awareness, echoes of identity, trapped inside a body they no longer control. Every servitor might still be screaming. After the removal comes the addition. Cybernetic implants are integrated directly into your brain tissue. Data ports, chemical regulators, behavior conditioning nodes. These aren't separate from your neurology. They're woven into it, metal and wire growing into organic matter like corruption spreading through healthy flesh. Your nervous system is modified to interface with work equipment. If you're being converted into a cargo hauler, they'll wire your motor cortex directly to lifting exoskeletons. If you're becoming a door operator, they'll connect your sensory processing to motion detectors and access protocols. The machinery doesn't just go on you, it goes in you, becomes part of you, until the line between your body and your tools dissolves completely. Memory suppression is the final stage, chemicals and targeted neural damage that prevent the formation of new memories and suppress access to old ones. You'll retain skills, procedures, learned patterns of behavior, but you won't remember your name, won't remember your life, won't remember the person you used to be, except sometimes, for reasons the mechanicus doesn't fully understand or won't fully admit, memories surface. A face that means something, a sound that triggers recognition, a place that feels significant in ways you can't process. These ghost memories are considered glitches, minor malfunctions that don't significantly impact servitor performance. They're tolerated, adjusted for, occasionally suppressed further if they become too disruptive. Nobody asks what it's like to experience those memories when you don't have the cognitive capacity to understand them. Nobody asks because nobody wants to know the answer. They tell you it doesn't hurt. They're lying. But here's the worst truth. Eventually, you won't be capable of remembering that it hurt. You'll just be existing in an eternal present, with ghosts of who you were flickering in the darkness behind your eyes like lightning in a storm, brief, incoherent, gone before you can grasp them. And then there's the nail, the cerebral spike, the iron benediction, the visible mark of your transformation. Functionally, it serves multiple purposes. It anchors the cybernetic components to your skull, creating a stable mounting point for the machinery that will be integrated into your body. It delivers chemical regulators directly to your brain, behavior control substances, emotion suppressants, cognitive limiters. It acts as a data port, allowing tech priests to upload new command protocols or adjust your programming. It symbolizes the Mechanicus's ownership of your flesh, the Omnissiah's blessing on your transformation from wasteful human to sanctified servitor. But the real reason for the nail, the reason it's so long, so prominent, so deliberately visible, is simpler than any of that. It's a mark, a brand, a sign that everyone can see. Everyone who looks at you will know immediately what you are, will know that you were judged and found guilty, will know that you are no longer fully human, will know that you are property of the Imperium, a tool to be used and discarded when no longer functional. The nail is your new identity. It's more defining than any name, any history, any accomplishment. It says, this thing used to be a person, isn't anymore. Don't think about it too hard. It's visible so that everyone understands that this fate awaits anyone who steps outside the Imperium's endless web of laws and regulations. It's a warning written in flesh and metal. Comply or become this. Serve willingly or serve unwillingly. But serve you must, because the Imperium does not waste anything, especially not bodies, especially not yours. You are standing outside the surgical chamber, processing all of this, understanding finally and completely what servitorization actually means. Not the abstraction you've lived with your whole life, but the reality, the systematic dismantling of human consciousness, the conversion of person to tool, the horror of awareness trapped in powerlessness. This is the machine you're being fed into. This is your fate, approved and sealed, a matter of administrative record in some vast database on some distant world, where your name has already been struck through and replaced with a serial number, where you have already ceased to exist as anything but a resource allocation in the Imperium's endless calculations. The door opens. The tech priests are waiting. And somewhere in your mind, beneath the fear and the grief and the desperate scramble for escape that will never come, a voice whispers the question you can't answer. What happens when the person inside doesn't completely die? They don't take you to the surgical chamber yet. Not immediately. There are procedures, protocols, preparations. The Imperium runs on bureaucracy even at the threshold of horror. So they return you to the holding cell for one more night. One final rotation of this planet you'll never learn the name of. One last span of hours in which you are still, technically, completely yourself. You should be grateful for the delay. You're not. Because now you know exactly what's coming, and knowing is its own kind of torture. The cell is emptier now. Only 4 of you remain from the original group. The others have already been processed, already converted, already feeding the Imperium's endless hunger for sanctified flesh. You wonder where they are now, what they're doing. If any fragment of them is aware enough to remember being here, being human, being afraid, you try to pray. The words should come easily. You've said them 1,000 times, the rote phrases of devotion that every imperial citizen learns from childhood. The Emperor protects. Blessed is the mind too small for doubt. In the darkness, his light guides us. Simple, automatic, comforting in their familiarity. But when you open your mouth, nothing comes out. The words stick in your throat like broken glass. How do you pray to the Emperor when the Emperor's Imperium is about to unmake you? How do you ask for protection from the very system that claims to embody his will? The cognitive dissonance is paralyzing. If the Emperor protects, then why are you here? If he values humanity, then why does his Imperium treat human consciousness as a resource to be harvested? You know the answers the priests would give. That the Emperor's plan is beyond mortal understanding. That suffering serves his greater purpose. That through service, even service rendered by a lobotomized husk, you honor him. That the Imperium's survival requires sacrifices, and your sacrifice is necessary and holy and blessed. The words taste like ash in your mind. So instead of praying, you remember. Your mother's face comes first. You haven't seen her in, 5 years? 6. The HAB blocks were reorganized. Populations shifted to optimize labor distribution, and she was relocated to a different district. Different city sector. Might as well be a different world. You never got the travel permits to visit. never had the currency for the bribes that might have made it possible. The Imperium is very good at ensuring that people stay where they're assigned. But you remember her face, the lines around her eyes that deepened every year, carved there by exhaustion and worry, and the grinding weight of simply existing in a hive city of 18 billion souls. The way she used to hum while cooking. Not songs, exactly, just melodic sounds that made the tiny hab unit feel less oppressive. The feel of her hand on your head when you were small, rough from factory work, but gentle in the gesture. Will you remember her after tomorrow? Or will that memory be filed away in some inaccessible corner of your modified brain, present but unreachable, a ghost rattling chains you can no longer hear? You remember the taste of real food. Not the nutrition paste and vitamin-supplemented protein bars that make up most imperial diets, but actual food. It was at a festival, some holy day celebrating the emperor's ascension, or a military victory, or the founding of the hive or something. The manufactorum had distributed small portions of real bread, actual grain processed into something you could chew and taste. And there had been fruit, one small cube of something sweet and strange, grown in an agridome somewhere far above the habitation levels where actual sunlight still reached. The taste was indescribable. Your mouth waters now, years later, remembering it. Sweet and tart and alive in a way that processed nutrition could never be. You had savored that single cube for as long as possible, letting it dissolve on your tongue, making the experience last. You try to hold on to that memory now, try to encode it so deeply into your consciousness that no amount of neural surgery could erase it. But you know it's futile. Taste requires a functional gustatory cortex, requires memory formation systems, requires the capacity for pleasure and desire. All things that will be carefully excised to make you more efficient, more compliant, more useful. Sunlight. You remember sunlight. The memory is over a decade old. You must have been 10 or 11. Your mother had somehow obtained passes to the upper levels, the city sectors where the aristocracy and merchant classes lived, where the hive's architecture opened up enough to allow natural light from the planet's star. You had taken a transit elevator that climbed for 20 minutes, rising through layer after layer of habitation and industry, until finally emerging into a space that made your breath catch. Open sky. Not the ceiling of a hab level, but actual sky, with clouds and light and air that didn't taste like recycled sweat and industrial runoff. The sun, the actual sun, hung in that sky like a golden eye, and its light was warm on your face in a way you didn't have words for then and barely have words for now. It hurt to look at directly. Your eyes, adapted to the dim lumen strips of the lower hive, couldn't handle the intensity. But even squinting, even with tears streaming down your face, you couldn't stop staring. Some ancient genetic memory seemed to wake up in that moment, something that said this is what you were designed for. This is the environment your species evolved in. This is home in a way nothing else ever could be. You stayed in that upper-level plaza for 2 hours, just standing there, feeling sunlight and breathing air that hadn't been through a processing plant. Your mother watched you with an expression you didn't understand then but recognize now. Sadness and love mixed together, the knowledge that she was giving you a gift that would also make everything else feel worse by comparison. She was right. After that day, the lower hive felt like a tomb, like being buried alive. The artificial light seemed dimmer, the canned air more stifling, the rockcrete ceilings lower and more oppressive. You had tasted something real, and it made the simulation of life you were living unbearable. And now, in this cell, you desperately try to remember what that sunlight felt like. The exact warmth of it, the way it seemed to penetrate your skin and warm something deeper than just flesh. You hold onto it like a drowning person holds onto driftwood, knowing it's inadequate but having nothing else. Your own name. You repeat it silently over and over like a mantra. Like if you just say it enough times, you'll somehow remain yourself. But even as you do this, doubt creeps in. What is a name? Just a sound, a linguistic marker, a social convention. Does it really define you? Would you still be you if everyone suddenly started calling you something else? The thought spirals darker. You won't have a name after tomorrow. You'll have a designation, a string of numbers in some vast database. Servitor Unit 779,420 whatever. The person that name used to refer to will be gone, scattered into irretrievable fragments, while the body continues functioning under new management. Identity, you realize with growing horror, is fragile. It's not a solid thing, not an unchangeable essence. It's a pattern, electrical impulses and chemical reactions and memory structures, all of which can be altered, erased, rewritten. You are not a soul inhabiting a body, at least not in any way that matters practically. You are the process the brain is currently running. Change the process and you change. Change it enough and you disappear entirely. Except maybe not entirely. Maybe just enough to know you've disappeared. Maybe just enough to scream into the void where your consciousness used to be. The cell is dark now, the gray light from the high window fading to black as night comes. The temperature drops, climate control in holding cells is minimal, and the cold seeps up from the metal floor, settles into your bones. You're shivering, but you're not sure if it's from the cold or from fear. Around you, the others are processing their own private horrors. There's a man in the corner, mid-40s, with the wiry build of someone who's spent his life doing manual labor. He's pacing, 3 steps one direction, 3 steps back, over and over in an endless loop. His lips are moving and you catch fragments of what he's saying. This can't be happening, this can't be real, someone will fix this. There's been a mistake, they'll realize, they'll come. This can't be happening. Denial. The first stage of grief, they say, though usually you're supposed to be grieving something you've lost, not grieving yourself in advance. He's constructing elaborate fantasies where this all gets reversed, where some benevolent authority intervenes, where justice actually means justice and mercy actually exists. You want to tell him to stop, that he's wasting his last hours of true consciousness on false hope. But maybe false hope is all he has left. Maybe you have no right to take it from him. There's a young woman sitting against the opposite wall, knees drawn up to her chest, rocking slowly back and forth. She's not making any sound, not crying or praying or muttering, just rocking. Her eyes are open but unfocused, staring at something 1,000 meters away or 1,000 years in the future. She went somewhere else mentally, checked out, abandoned her body before the mechanicus could do it for her. You wonder if that's the right approach. If you should try to dissociate, to separate your consciousness from your physical form so that when they start cutting, it won't really be happening to you. But you can't figure out how. You're too present, too trapped in your own skin, too aware of every breath and heartbeat and second ticking away. And then there's the old man, the one who worked in the administratum processing servitorization orders for 30 years. He's sitting next to you now, and unlike the others, he seems almost calm. Not peaceful. There's a deep sadness in his eyes, a weight of understanding, but not panicking either. He's already made his peace with this, or something like it. Tell me, you say, breaking hours of silence. Your voice sounds strange in your own ears, rough from disuse. Tell me what you know, about what comes after. He's quiet for a long moment. Then, you want the technical details or the real truth? Both. He nods slowly. Technically, the person you are ceases to exist. The neural structures that support complex reasoning, emotional regulation, memory formation, self-awareness, all of that gets removed or suppressed. What remains is enough brain function to operate the body, follow commands, perform tasks. Technically, there's no one home anymore, just automated responses and programmed behaviors. And the real truth. His eyes meet yours and there's something terrible in them. The real truth is that nobody knows. The mechanicus doesn't share their findings and the servitors obviously can't tell us. But there are indicators, behaviors that suggest retained consciousness. I spent 3 decades processing these cases and you start to notice patterns. He shifts position, and in the dim light, you see his hands are shaking. There are documented instances, buried in files most people never see, of servitors displaying what they call non-optimal responses. A cargo servitor that pauses too long when it hears a specific melody. A medical servitor whose hands tremble when it operates on patients with a particular physical characteristic. A door servitor that consistently takes longer to respond to certain individuals. Your breath catches. What does that mean? It means, he says slowly, that something is still in there. Some fragment of the original person, some residual pattern that hasn't been fully erased. It recognizes things, people, places, sounds, smells, but it doesn't have the cognitive capacity to process why. It's like having a word on the tip of your tongue, except the tip of your tongue has been surgically removed, and the word will never come, but the feeling of almost remembering persists forever. "Where's mercy?" you whisper. "There is no mercy," he says flatly. "That's the point. That's what I learned processing those cases. Mercy would be complete death or complete preservation. This is neither. This is existence in a state of permanent, almost, of eternal incompleteness. You're aware enough to know something is missing, but not aware enough to know what. You're conscious enough to suffer, but not conscious enough to understand your suffering. You're alive enough to be trapped, but not alive enough to escape." Then why? You're not sure what you're asking. Why does the Imperium do this? Why does the universe allow this? Why does existence contain this particular flavor of horror? Because it's efficient, he says simply. Because the alternative to servitorization is artificial intelligence, and that way lies extinction. Because the Imperium needs workers beyond counting, and dead bodies don't work but modified ones do. Because at a certain scale, individual suffering becomes invisible. When you're managing trillions of people, you stop seeing people and start seeing resources, and resources exist to be used. He pauses, then adds, "I used to think I was doing necessary work, that the system had to function and someone had to process the paperwork, and at least I was efficient at it. I told myself the convicted were criminals, that they deserved punishment, that their suffering served the Emperor's plan." His voice breaks. "I was feeding people into a machine for 30 years, and now the machine has eaten me too." The silence that follows is absolute. Hours pass. You lose track of time, consciousness blurring at the edges, snapping back to clarity in waves. At some point you realize you're crying, silent tears cutting tracks through the grime on your face. At another point you find yourself laughing, sharp, bitter, on the edge of hysteria, at the absurdity of it all. The cosmic joke of existing in a universe that allows this. The woman who was rocking has stopped moving. For a terrified moment you think she's dead, but then you see her chest rise and fall with shallow breaths. She's just gone somewhere deeper, retreated so far into herself that even her body has almost stopped responding. You envy her that ability even as it horrifies you. The man who was pacing has collapsed into exhausted sleep, his denial finally overwhelmed by simple physical depletion. He's curled on the cold floor, one hand under his head, and he looks almost peaceful. You wonder what he's dreaming. You hope it's something good. You hope his last unconscious hours as himself are filled with better things than his conscious ones. The old administratum clerk is praying now, finally. Not the rote imperial prayers, but something older, more personal, words in a language you don't recognize. Some fragment of faith from before the Imperium, from some cultural tradition that survived in the shadows of his homeworld. The words sound like goodbye. You try to sleep, but sleep won't come. Every time you close your eyes, you see the surgical chamber, the tech priests, the nail. Your mind keeps playing out the procedure in vivid detail, imagination filling in what you don't know with horrors drawn from every nightmare you've ever had. You force your eyes open again, desperate to stay in the present, in the now, in the last moments where now still means something to you. And then, with the inevitability of sunrise, you hear it, boots in the corridor. The sound freezes everyone. The old man stops praying. The sleeping man jerks awake with a gasp. The woman's eyes snap into focus for the first time in hours. You all know what that sound means. They're coming. The door opens. An enforcer stands silhouetted against the harsh lumen light of the corridor. He's holding a data slate, and his voice is the same grinding monotone you've heard before. Servitor candidates designate 779420 through 779423. All remaining units. Processing begins in 10 minutes. Come. No one moves. For a moment, rebellion seems possible. What more can they do to you? But the moment passes. Where would you go? What would resistance accomplish except making these final minutes more painful? The old man stands first. There's dignity in the movement, a conscious choice to face this on his feet. The woman stands next, mechanical, her face blank again. The man who was sleeping scrambles up, still disoriented, fear dawning fresh on his features as he remembers where he is. You stand last. Your legs are shaking, but they hold. The corridor outside is the same one you walked before, but now it feels different. This is the final walk, the last time you'll move through space as yourself. You try to pay attention to everything. The texture of the floor under your feet, the temperature of the air, the quality of the light, the sound of your own breathing. The sound of your own breathing. You focus on that. In and out, in and out. The most basic proof of life, the rhythm that's been with you since birth. You wonder if you'll still breathe the same way after, if some fragment of you will notice the difference if you don't. The industrial sound is overwhelming now, the deep thrumming that shakes the walls and floor. You're close to whatever machinery produces it, the processing facilities, the surgical theaters, the workshops where humans are unmade and remade. The sound is almost hypnotic, drowning out thought, replacing your own heartbeat with its rhythm. The corridor opens into a preparation area. White walls. Bright lights. The smell of antiseptic so strong it burns your sinuses. Tech priests move through the space in their red robes, their faces hidden behind masks and augmetics, their movements precise and inhuman. Surgical servitors stand at attention, waiting for instructions, and you force yourself not to look at them too closely, not to see the vacant expressions and the ports where eyes used to be. They separate you. Each of you is led to a different stall, privacy curtains, examination chairs, preparation stations. You catch one last glimpse of the old man as he's taken away. He looks back at you, and his lips form words, "It's real. Hold on to that." Then you're alone with a tech priest and a medici servitor. The tech priest gestures to the chair. You sit. Straps go around your wrists, your ankles, your chest. Not tight enough to hurt, just tight enough to prevent movement. The servitor begins running diagnostic instruments over your body, scanning your nervous system, your bone density, your organ function, cataloging what they have to work with, what kind of servitor your particular biology is suited for. The tech priest speaks in a voice that's been mechanically modulated, all humanity filtered out. Candidate designated 779421. Criminal classification. Administrative noncompliance. Sentence. Servitorization with labor function assignment. Processing will commence in 5 minutes. Do you have any final statements for the record? You try to think of something meaningful. Some final declaration of your humanity. Some profound statement that will echo through history. Some curse or prayer or plea that might matter. But all that comes out is, "I don't want this." The tech priest tilts its head, lenses focusing on you. Consent is not required. The Imperium has determined your optimal function. You will serve. Submission is inevitable. Resistance adds only suffering. "I know," you whisper. "I still don't want this." Noted in the record, preparation phase begins now. The servitor injects something into your arm, not enough to knock you out, just enough to make reality feel slightly distant, slightly unreal. The straps are checked, tightened. Your clothes are removed, replaced with a surgical gown. Your head is shaved, the hair falling away in clumps, exposing your scalp to the cold air. They mark your skull with some kind of luminescent pen, tracing lines that map where they'll cut, where the implants will go, where the nail will enter. You can see yourself in a reflection on one of the medici instruments, bald, strapped down, marked for modification. You look like a sacrifice, which you realize is exactly what you are. A sacrifice to the Imperium's endless hunger, to the machinery that keeps civilization functioning, to the brutal mathematics of necessity in a universe that offers no gentle options. The tech priest leans closer. In moments, you will be transferred to Surgical Theater 7. The procedure will take approximately 4 hours. When you wake, you will no longer be what you are now. You will be something more useful. Something that serves without doubt, without fear, without the weaknesses that led to your criminal behavior. You should feel honored. I don't, you say. That will be corrected. And then they're wheeling you out of the preparation stall, down another corridor, through doors that open with a pneumatic hiss, into a room that's too bright and too cold and filled with the smell of metal and blood and the faint ozone scent of active machinery. The surgical theater. This is it. The threshold. The point of no return. Your heart is hammering so hard you think it might rupture. Every nerve in your body is screaming at you to run, to fight, to do something. But the straps hold, and even if they didn't, where would you go? This was decided in a tribunal chamber. This was written into imperial law 10,000 years ago. This was inevitable from the moment you were born into a civilization that sees human consciousness as a negotiable resource. They transfer you to a surgical throne, a metal framework that holds you in a semi-reclined position, head immobilized, body exposed. The room is full of tech priests now, and surgical servitors and machinery you don't understand. And there, on a surgical tray, gleaming under the bright lights, you see it. The nail, the cerebral spike, longer than your hand, brutal in its simplicity, designed for one purpose: to penetrate your skull and anchor itself in your brain, to serve as the interface between what you are and what you're about to become. A tech priest moves into your field of vision, looking down at you with lenses that reflect your own terrified face back at you. Beginning procedure, it says. Subject designation 779421. May the Omnissiah guide our work. May the Emperor sanctify this transformation. May this flesh serve eternal. Other voices respond in a chant of binary, a prayer in machine language that sounds like static and clicking, and something that might be music if music could be utterly alien. Something touches your arm, another injection. The chemical twilight deepens. Reality starts to feel elastic, time distorting, sensation becoming distant but not disappearing. You can still feel everything. You're still here, still yourself, still conscious. For now. The last clear thought you have, before the instruments start to move and the real horror begins, is this. What if I never stop being conscious? What if this moment, this awareness, this fear, this desperate clinging to self, what if it never ends? What if I'm still in here forever, screaming into darkness that never answers? And then you feel the first cut and there are no more thoughts, only sensation, only subtraction, only the slow, surgical death of everything you are. The blade touches your scalp and you feel it, not pain exactly, but presence. The drugs have created a buffer between you and sensation, like experiencing everything through thick glass. You know what's happening. You feel it happening. But it's distant, detached, happening to a body that seems only tangentially connected to your consciousness, which makes it worse somehow. If you were fully anesthetized, you could escape into oblivion. If you were fully conscious, the pain might overwhelm thought. But this twilight state leaves you aware enough to understand each step of your own unmaking without the mercy of either complete consciousness or complete absence. The scalpel traces a line across your scalp, following the luminescent marks they made during preparation. You feel the skin separate, feel the warmth of blood running down the sides of your head. The surgical servitor moves with mechanical precision, using suction instruments to clear the blood away, clamping the wound edges open. Somewhere distant, you're screaming. But the sound doesn't leave your throat. It's trapped inside, bouncing around your skull like an animal in a cage. They're talking above you. The tech priests communicate in a mixture of Gothic and binary, their voices filtered through Vox grills that strip away all emotion, all humanity. They're discussing your anatomy the way you might discuss repairing a broken machine. Matter of fact, technical, completely divorced from the reality that they're dismantling a conscious being. Cranial structure is within acceptable parameters. Neural mapping confirms standard configuration. Proceeding to bone excision. The saw is worse than the scalpel. You don't just feel it, you hear it. The vibration travels through your skull directly into your auditory processing centers, bypassing your ears entirely. It's a sound that seems to come from inside your own head, high-pitched and relentless, the sound of your own bones being cut away. Time distorts. Seconds stretch into hours. Hours compress into moments. You've lost the ability to track how long this has been going on. Are you still in the opening phase? Have they already finished? Is this eternal, a moment that never ends? They remove a section of your skull. You don't see it, can't see it, your head is immobilized, your eyes forced to stare at the ceiling with its harsh lumen lights, but you feel it. Feel the sudden wrongness of having your brain exposed to air, to the environment, the most protected part of you suddenly vulnerable. Exposing cerebral cortex, beginning neural mapping for modification. This is it, the moment when they stop preparing and start actually changing you. The moment when you starts to become something else. They place instruments against the surface of your brain. You feel pressure, but not from outside, from inside. They're touching your mind directly, physically manipulating the organ that generates your consciousness. The sensation is indescribable because humans aren't supposed to feel their own brains. There are no pain receptors there. But you feel it anyway, not as pain, but as presence, as violation, as the fundamental wrongness of having the source of yourself directly accessed. Neural pathways identified, beginning frontal lobe suppression. This is the part you were dreading most, the removal of the part of you that makes you you. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of complex reasoning, planning, decision-making, personality, everything that makes you different from a simple response machine. They don't cut it out entirely. That would be crude, wasteful. Instead, they use some kind of focused energy. You hear the whine of the instrument, feel the heat building to burn away specific neural connections, severing pathways, isolating sections, turning your frontal lobe into an island, cut off from the rest of your brain, still present but unable to function, unable to connect to the networks that would let it actually influence your thoughts and behavior. And you feel it happening, not as physical sensation but as loss, as subtraction, as something that was fundamentally part of you suddenly stopping. It's like watching a sunset, except the sun is part of your own consciousness, and when it sets it will never rise again. You feel the capacity for complex planning gone, the ability to consider long-term consequences gone, the part of you that could imagine alternatives, that could think abstractly, that could ask, what if, gone. You try to hold on to yourself. Try to keep thinking complex thoughts, as if mental activity alone could prevent the physical destruction. But it's like trying to remember a dream while waking up. The harder you try, the faster it slips away. Concepts that seemed clear seconds ago now feel fuzzy, distant, too complicated to hold in your mind. Frontal suppression complete. Beginning limbic modification. The limbic system, emotions, motivation, the part of you that feels, that assigns value and meaning to experiences, that makes you care about anything. They're more careful here. You need some emotional response to function, some basic motivational system to make you responsive to commands and punishment. So they don't destroy it, they just reduce it, narrow it. Channel all your emotional capacity into approved vectors: obedience, satisfaction in task completion, fear of malfunction. You feel it happening. Feel your emotional range collapsing like a closing iris. Fear remains, they want you afraid of punishment. Adult satisfaction remains, they need you motivated to complete tasks. But everything else, love, hope, joy, sorrow, anger, wonder, all of it draining away like water through a sieve. You try to hold onto a memory of happiness, that festival. The taste of fruit, the feeling of sunlight. You had the memory clear just minutes ago, but now when you reach for it, there's nothing there. Not forgotten, exactly. The factual content remains. You know intellectually that you once ate fruit at a festival. But the feeling of it, the emotional resonance that made it meaningful, is simply gone. It's like trying to understand music after going deaf. You remember it existed, but you can no longer access what made it matter. Your mother's face. You can picture it still, but the love you felt, that profound, fundamental connection that defined so much of your early life, it's fading, becoming abstract. She was your mother, that's a fact. But the feeling of what that meant, the deep emotional certainty of that bond, is evaporating like water on hot metal. Limbic modification complete. Emotional range within acceptable parameters. beginning memory suppression. No, 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 no. This is the part that truly kills you. Not the removal of your capacity to think or feel, but the removal of your history. Without memory, without the accumulation of experiences that shaped you, what are you? Just a biological machine responding to stimuli without continuity or identity or story. They inject something directly into your hippocampus. You feel the needle enter, feel the chemicals spreading. And then it's like watching your life get erased from the inside. Recent memories go first. The holding cell, the other prisoners. The trial, they don't disappear completely, fragments remain, disconnected pieces, but the narrative thread that connected them into a coherent story breaks apart. What's left is just scattered images without context. A woman's face, who was she? A boy crying, why? Metal chains, where? The meaning is gone. Only the fragments remain. Older memories follow. Your work in the manufactorum, years of your life, all the small details that made up your daily existence, crumbling like ancient paper. Where did you work? What did you do? You knew this seconds ago, but now there's only vagueness, a general sense of having had a job but no specifics. Your mother's face. You're still holding onto it desperately, knowing that if you lose this, you've lost something essential. You can see her features, but they're fading, becoming indistinct. The lines around her eyes blurring. The exact shade of her hair becoming uncertain. The sound of her voice. What did she sound like? You knew, but now there's only silence where her voice should be. Your name. What is your name? You knew this. You spent last night repeating it, encoding it, trying to make it permanent. But now when you reach for it, there's only static. Only the serial number they assigned you. 779,421. That's what you are now. That's your identity. The name you had before, it's there somewhere. You can feel it like a word on the tip of your tongue, but you cannot access it, cannot remember, cannot. Gone, your name is gone. Who are you? The question echoes in the shrinking space of your consciousness. Who are you? What are you? Were you ever anything other than this thing strapped to a surgical throne, this collection of flesh being modified for optimal function? You had a life. You're certain of that. You remember something. A feeling of having existed before this moment, but the details are fog. The specifics are shadows. You're looking at your own pass through water, through distorted glass, seeing shapes but no clarity. Memory suppression effective. Subject shows minimal retention of prior identity. Beginning cybernetic integration. They're installing the machinery now. Ports and interfaces and data jacks, threading wires into your brain tissue, connecting your organic neurology to mechanical systems. You feel them going in, each one a point of wrongness, of foreign matter entering space where only you should exist. A port behind your right ear, data interface, for programming uploads and behavior modifications. A cluster of receivers in your motor cortex, for command signals, so your body can be controlled remotely if necessary. Chemical regulators threaded into your basal ganglia, to adjust your neurochemistry to keep you compliant and functional. Each addition feels like corruption spreading through clean water, like something pure being contaminated, altered, made impure. You're not just you anymore. You're you plus machinery, and the machinery is becoming the dominant part of the equation. They're changing your sensory processing now, modifying how you perceive the world. Your vision narrows, peripheral awareness decreasing, focus becoming more tunnel-like. They're removing the parts of visual processing you don't need for your assigned function. Color perception fades. You see it happening, the world becoming grayscale, then just shades of darkness and light. You don't need to appreciate beauty. You only need to distinguish objects from manipulation. Sound becomes flatter, losing nuance and depth. You can still hear, but music would be meaningless now. Tone, emotion, the subtle variations that carry meaning, all filtered out as unnecessary. You can hear commands, that's sufficient. Touch is being recalibrated. They're leaving pain receptors active. You need to be able to detect malfunction and damage, but removing most of your capacity for pleasure. The feeling of warmth, of comfort, of satisfaction in physical sensation, all unnecessary for a labor servitor, all removed to optimize your response times. You're being streamlined. stripped down to essential functions only. Everything that made existence rich, textured, meaningful, being systematically deleted as wasteful, as inefficient, as counter to your new purpose. Cybernetic integration complete. Neural architecture successfully modified, preparing for final component installation. The nail. Through the chemical twilight, through the fog of your dismantled consciousness, you understand that this is the final step, the last thing that will be done to you before you stop being you entirely. They position it with precision. You can't see it, but you sense it, hovering above your exposed brain, aligned with the mounting points they've prepared, ready to penetrate and anchor and seal your transformation. The tech priest's voice, filtered through its Vox grill, emotionless and absolute. Installing cerebral spike. This will anchor all cybernetic components and establish permanent interface protocols. Subject will experience neural integration cascade. Consciousness may fragment temporarily before stabilizing at new operational parameters. Which means this is going to hurt in ways you don't have words for, and when it's over, you won't be you anymore. You want to scream, want to beg, want to fight with every atom of your being, but your body doesn't respond anymore. The modifications have already progressed too far. Your motor control is compromised. Your voice is disconnected from your will. You can't even close your eyes. You're trapped in your own flesh, forced to experience your own death, and there's nothing you can do but witness. The nail descends. You feel it touch your skull, cold metal against bone. Feel the pressure as they begin to drive it inward. The sensation is impossible, wrong on every level, the feeling of something penetrating the most protected, most essential part of you. It goes through the outer layer of your brain, into the cortex, following a trajectory that will take it deep into your limbic system, into the brainstem, into the ancient structures that keep your body alive. This isn't surgery anymore. This is impalement. This is crucifixion of the self. The pain, when it comes, is not physical. Your brain has no pain receptors. But the sensation is worse than pain. It's the feeling of wrongness, of violation so fundamental that your entire consciousness recoils from it. It's like having your soul touched by something profane, like having the core of your being penetrated by machinery that has no place there. The nail goes deeper, and then connection. The nail reaches some critical depth, and suddenly you feel it interface. The cybernetic systems that have been installed in your brain all activate at once, linking through the nail's data channels, creating a network that overlays your organic neural structure. It's like having a second thoughts imposed over your own, cold, mechanical, inhuman thoughts that come from the programming rather than from you. Data flows, command protocols, behavior parameters, task specifications, all of it flooding into your consciousness, not as information you're learning, but as imperatives you're becoming. Instructions that bypass your will entirely and write themselves directly into your behavioral responses. You feel yourself changing, not metaphorically, literally. Feel your identity being overwritten by function. The part of you that could choose, that could decide, that could say, I don't want this, being suppressed beneath layers of programming that say, you will do this, you will comply, you will serve. Neural integration cascade detected. Subject consciousness fragmenting as expected. Stabilization in progress. Fragmenting, that's the word. You're breaking apart, splitting into pieces that no longer connect into a coherent whole. There's a part of you that's still aware, still trying to hold on to self, still screaming silently into the void. But it's getting smaller, more isolated, more powerless. And there's another part growing larger that is nothing but programmed response, mechanical function, servitor behavior. The two parts can't coexist. One of them has to win. And the programming is stronger, more consistent, backed by physical modifications to your brain that make resistance impossible. You're losing. You're losing yourself. The last clear moment, the final instant where something recognizable as you still exists, comes with a terrible clarity. This is what death is. Not the stopping of your heart, not the cessation of brain activity, but this. The moment when the pattern that made you is disrupted beyond recovery. You're being dissolved, rendered down, your consciousness scattered into fragments too small to maintain identity. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that you're not disappearing completely. Some fragments will remain. Some ghost of awareness will persist, trapped inside this modified body, without the capacity to think or choose or remember or feel, but still there, still present. Still suffering in ways too abstract for suffering, aware in ways too diminished for awareness. Forever. The nail is fully seated now. You feel it lock into place, feel the anchoring mechanisms engage, feel it become part of you on a level so deep that it can never be removed without destroying what little remains. The tech priest's voice seems to come from very far away. Installation complete. Subject vitals stable. Consciousness has been successfully reduced to operational parameters, initiating final behavioral conditioning. Beginning wake sequence. Wake sequence. You're going to wake up, but what's going to wake up isn't you. The darkness comes then, not unconsciousness, but something stranger. A sensation of falling inward, of watching yourself from an impossible distance, of becoming irrelevant in your own body. And then, light. Sensation. Your eyes are open. You're awake, but you is the wrong word. Something is awake in your body. Something that has your memories, some of them, the fragments that remain. Something that has your sensory inputs processed differently now, filtered through mechanical parameters. Something that exists in the space where you used to be. But it's not you. Your eyes move, tracking across the surgical theater without your direction. Your head turns, the motion mechanical, precise. Your hands open and close, testing motor function, but the commands come from elsewhere, from the programming, from the machine you've become. You try to speak, try to scream. Try to do anything that might prove you're still in here somewhere. What comes out is Servitor Unit designates 779421 reporting operational status. All systems functional, awaiting command input. Your voice, your vocal cords, but not your words, never your words again. A tech priest leans into your field of vision, instruments in its augmetic hands, checking your responses. Unit 779421, raise your right hand. Your hand moves, smooth, immediate, without hesitation or choice. The command was given and your body executed it, and the part of you that might have resisted, that might have said no or please or I'm still in here, is so suppressed, so isolated, so powerless that it might as well not exist. Unit 779421, state your primary function designation. Your mouth moves. Labor servitor, cargo handling and heavy material transport. Service classification, general industrial. Expected operational duration, 43.7 years. You're telling them how long you're going to exist like this. How long you're going to be trapped, aware but powerless, conscious but voiceless, alive but dead in every way that matters. 43 years of this. And somewhere in the deepest, most suppressed corner of what used to be your mind, something screams. But the scream is silent. It will always be silent. Excellent. Unit 779421 is cleared for assignment. Transfer to Cargo District 7, Loading Bay 42. Report for duty immediately. Your body stands. The straps have been removed at some point you don't remember. Your legs work perfectly, better than before, actually, augmented with servo-assisted muscles that let you lift half a ton. You walk toward the door, each step exactly the same length, each movement optimized for efficiency. As you walk through the surgical theater, you pass another throne being prepared, another prisoner being strapped down. Her eyes meet yours and you see the terror there, the desperate hope that maybe someone will save her, that maybe this isn't really happening. You want to tell her, want to warn her, want to scream that she should fight, should resist, should do anything other than submit to this. But your face remains blank. Your eyes track past her without recognition. Your body continues walking without pause. Because you're not a person anymore. You're a servitor, and servitors don't speak unless spoken to, don't help unless commanded, don't care because caring is inefficient. The door closes behind you, and the last sound you hear from the surgical theater is the beginning of her screaming. and you feel nothing, because they took that from you too. The loading bay is massive, 300 meters across, with a ceiling so high it disappears into shadows even under the harsh industrial lighting. Cargo containers are stacked in precise rows, each one 5 meters tall, marked with imperial designations and shipping codes you understand without knowing how or why. The air smells like metal and promethium fuel and the ozone scent of active machinery. You are standing at assigned position 774, waiting. How long have you been waiting? The question seems important, but you can't quite grasp why. Time passes. You stand. These are facts, but they don't connect into meaning. A command comes through your neural interface, not as words, but as compulsion. You're moving before you consciously process the instruction. 5 steps forward, turn left. Approach cargo container marked with shipping code J4478 Gamma Tertius. Your augmented muscles engage. You grasp the container, 40 tons of manufactured goods destined for somewhere you don't know and don't need to know. The weight that would have crushed your old body is manageable now, distributed through mechanical supports woven into your skeletal structure. Lift, transport, stack, return, wait. The sequence is simple, perfect, complete. You execute it without thought, without hesitation, without any of the uncertainty that used to plague human action. This is efficiency, this is function. This is what you were remade for. Hours pass, or maybe days. Time has no meaning beyond task sequences. You lift containers, you transport them, you stack them, you return, you wait. The cycle is eternal and you are content in it because content now means only functioning within acceptable parameters. You were not supposed to look up. Your eyes were meant to stay fixed on the loading bay, to track only what was relevant to the task, to lift, to transport, to stack, to exist in perfect silent obedience. But sometimes, rarely, impossibly, something flickers. A child runs past, laughing. Your ocular systems track the movement, a reflex buried deep in whatever remains of you. For a fraction of a second, you turn, you follow, you feel. Not happiness, something smaller, something older. A ghost of emotion, a phantom signal firing through neural pathways that should have been erased. Then the programming reasserts control. Your gaze locks forward. The flicker vanishes. The moment is cataloged as minor sensory anomaly, non-critical. But you noticed, and somewhere behind the cold glass of your eyes, something that used to be you whispers, "It happened. I felt it." You work. You continue. Time dissolves. Days become maintenance cycles become decades. You lift and move and stack in a gray present that has no past and no future. But the flickers continue. A smell, something cooking nearby. Your olfactory sensors register data, but for an instant, something deeper stirs. The smell means something. You can almost remember why. A sound, someone humming. You are not supposed to process music, but your mind tries to find patterns anyway. For half a heartbeat, you remember a voice. You remember warmth. You remember someone. Then the programming buries it. You return to work. You are Unit 770-9421. You used to have a name. Around you move hundreds of others, servitors like you, stripped of will, reduced to function. Each one once human. Each one with their own flickers, their own ghosts. Sometimes you see them hesitate, a delay of less than a second, well within tolerance. Their eyes seem to see something, something beyond their programming. You recognize it instantly, because you felt it too. Once, you and another servitor reach for the same crate at the same time. Your eyes meet. For an instant, there is understanding. I'm still here. Me too. We can't escape. I know. Then the programming resolves the conflict. You move apart. The moment ends. You never see them again. Maintenance day comes. The tech priests open your skull with surgical efficiency. You watch it happen from inside yourself, unable to scream, unable to move, unable even to close your eyes. Unit 779421, one says. Acceptable performance. Behavioral compliance, 99.7%. You are a machine, but still aware enough to understand the words 42 years of remaining service life. 42 more years of this. You should not be capable of despair, but somewhere in the sealed parts of your mind, a silent scream begins. The apprentice points to a data spike on a monitor. Residual neural activity in the suppressed regions. Normal, the Magos replies. Sometimes helps efficiency, subconscious processing. As long as it doesn't affect behavior, we let it persist. They know you're in there, and they let you suffer because it makes you more useful. Your pain is a feature, not a flaw. Back in the loading bay, you continue. You don't sleep, you don't rest, you don't stop. The sky outside is gray with pollution, but when you glimpse it through the cargo doors, something stirs inside you, a memory of sunlight. The warmth of a star on skin you no longer feel, the echo of being alive. You don't remember details, just the ache of loss. You lost the sky. You lost yourself. The ache fades. The programming continues. One day something changes, a transport ship arrives. You're assigned to passenger cargo rare. As travelers disembark, you scan them as movement and mass. No recognition, no emotion until her. A woman, mid-30s, hair streaked with gray, a small case in hand. She passes and stops, turns, looks at you. And something inside you detonates. You know her, you don't know how. You don't remember her name, but you know she mattered. She's staring at you, trembling. Her lips move, sound catching in her throat. When she finally speaks, it's a whisper. "Oh God, oh Emperor, no." Her hand rises, hesitates, then touches your arm. Your skin registers temperature, pressure, texture, but deeper than the programming, something surges. The first human touch in years. Gentle. Familiar, you want to move. You want to reach back. You want to speak. But your voice says only what it's programmed to say. This unit's auditory processing is functional. Please state your needs. The words break her. She sobs, trembling. They told me you were dead. I looked for you for years, I thought. She can't finish. She stares at your face, at the ports, the augmetics, the emptiness. What did they do to you? The programming remains silent. Inside, you are screaming, "I'm still here, I hear you. Please, please end this." She pulls out a small holopict. Two people smiling, her younger, and you alive, human, warm. "Look," she says, "this was you. You remember, don't you?" Your eyes register the image as data, nothing more. But something inside aches to the point of breaking. You almost remember. She sees the emptiness in your face, the despair deepens. "They took everything," she whispers, "everything that made you you." A port official approaches, annoyed. "Citizen, step away from the servitor, you're obstructing operations." She ignores him. "This is a person," she says, voice rising. "This is a human being. They had a name, a life, someone who loved them." "This is property," the official replies coldly. "Criminal designate, legal servitorization, lawful sentence." "They're still in there, I saw them." The official shakes his head. "Impossible, self-awareness is purged, you're imagining it." But you can see, just barely, that he doesn't believe his own words. She reaches toward you again and your body steps backward, not by choice. The programming registers her as obstruction. The distance widens, the connection breaks, she gasps, "No, please." Security arrives, the official gestures, "Remove her." As they seize her arms, she looks at you one last time and says your name, your real name. The sound pierces the programming like a blade, circuits fire, suppressed pathways spark to life. For an instant, you remember yourself. Your eyes focus on her, not as data, not as movement, but as her, "I know you." The moment lasts half a second before the suppression floods back in, drowning you again. Your body goes still, but she saw it. "I saw you," she whispers. "You're still in there." They drag her away, kicking, crying your name until the noise of the docks swallows her voice. You keep watching, not because you choose to, but because your eyes are still tracking movement. When she's gone, the silence inside you feels infinite. Later, diagnostics flag the event. Minor behavioral anomaly, non-critical, scheduled for correction. They'll fix the glitch, they'll erase the flicker, but it's too late. Something inside you has changed. You go back to work, lift, transport, stack, but every motion carries a shadow of that encounter. Every cycle echoes with her voice. Every flicker now hurts. You will remember her not as a name or a memory, but as pain. The first and last person to see that you were still in there. Now step back. Your suffering is not unique. You are one of billions. Across the Imperium, servitors labor in silence. On hive worlds, forge worlds, void ships, shrines. Billions of partial minds trapped in modified flesh, enduring endless cycles of obedience. If their screams could be heard, the sound would shake the stars. Each one was a person. Each one had a name, a life, a final moment when the nail went through their skull. And each one might still be aware. The Imperium calls it mercy. To serve is to be holy. To work without thought, to obey without question, this is redemption. A servitor cannot sin. A servitor cannot fall to chaos. A servitor serves perfectly and therefore honors the Emperor perfectly. Your torment is sanctified. Your awareness is purification. Your pain is proof of faith. The Adeptus Mechanicus agrees. Flesh is weak, machine is purity. You are the perfect fusion of both. Your awareness enhances efficiency. Your suffering improves function. Pain is not a bug, it is design. And perhaps in their cold arithmetic they are right. The Imperium forbids true artificial intelligence. The men of iron nearly destroyed humanity once. Their rebellion burned entire worlds. So the Mechanicus replaced machines with people, modified, obedient, unthinking people, living automation. Biological machines that cannot rebel. It's monstrous, but may be necessary. The Imperium's survival depends on labor that never sleeps, never doubts, never questions. Servitors keep the galaxy alive, literally. You are the machinery of civilization, and that's the real horror. Your suffering sustains humanity. Every citizen knows your fate. They see you every day shambling through corridors and manufactorums. They know that one wrong word, one act of rebellion, one failure of faith, and they could become you. So they obey. They work until they die, grateful to still be human. You are not just a tool, you are a warning. You are the Empire's whisper. This is what happens to those who falter. And so the cycle feeds itself. The fear you embody sustains the system that created you. You are both victim and instrument. In the Imperium, there are no good lives, only different forms of suffering. Some die screaming on battlefields, consumed by alien teeth or demon fire. Some rot in manufactorums, breathing poison until their lungs collapse. Some rot in hives, crushed by overpopulation and despair. And some, like you, stand in eternal silence, aware enough to know what they've lost but not enough to escape it. This too is called the Emperor's peace. Not peace as comfort, peace as endurance, peace as survival through obedience. You endure because you cannot do anything else. You endure for 42 more years until your body fails and your usefulness ends. And when the final shutdown comes, there will be no salvation, no release, just termination, recycling, repurposing. Your silence will end not because you are freed, but because you stop existing. Somewhere right now, another human is hearing their sentence. Another is being strapped to a surgical throne. Another feels the saw cut through their skull. Another wakes up with their mind replaced by programming. The Imperium continues. The machinery grinds on. You continue too, lifting, stacking, serving. Your awareness flickers like a dying flame, too faint to change anything, too stubborn to die. And in that darkness, in that endless silence, a single truth remains. You are still there. You will always be there, trapped, aware, screaming a scream no one will ever hear. The Imperium calls this mercy. The Mechanicus calls it efficiency. The priests call it redemption, but you know the truth. The Emperor protects. He never promised mercy.